Stevie,
Hey,
welcome on. So today, what we're going to be talking about is a little bit about how we can modify or still get our training in this crazy world that we're living in now. Stevie's going to talk about it kind of from the endurance side. I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about it from the strength athlete side. And before we get into this, I think we can just give a little intro on ourselves. So I think you guys know me as a senior scientist with Inside Tracker. You heard me talk with our senior VP of science, Melina George, last week about our new immunity panel that we just unleashed. Outside of Inside Tracker, I've been an athlete my whole life. I've been heavily involved in the strength and conditioning world, specifically training and doing a lot of in-gym, like we call it dry land training for hockey. I've been a hockey player my whole life. And then about 7 years ago, I switched over to CrossFit, and I've been a CrossFitter and weightlifter since then. So that's a little bit about my strength and conditioning background. Stevie, give us a little introduction on your athletic background.
thanks, Jamie. Yes, so I am a registered dietitian here at Inside Tracker, part of the team, working with content and marketing, writing blogs for you guys. You might see me cooking in the kitchen with my dog on weekend wellness here and there. But as an athlete, I am an endurance athlete. My kind of favorite race distance is the Ironman distance triathlon, long distance, but I really am pretty open to trying any sort of running, swimming, biking event. I've done half Ironmans, every other race distance, long distance swimming, a lot of marathons, ultra marathons, and myself, like Jimmy, I've always been an athlete, but a very different type of athlete than an endurance athlete. My background is mostly in lacrosse and soccer, and I was a lacrosse goalie, so I really did not like running until I stopped playing at the collegiate level, and then I decided to pick up running and automatically fell in love with it. So I've done over 10 Ironmans and have been in the sport since I was 22, 23 years old. So it's been about 10 years. So it's been pretty fun.
That's a long
I know, right? You think about it, if it's kind of like a second career sport for me. It's a long time. So yeah, I've learned a lot. Just being in the sport, but also in this profession from myself and other athletes. And I know a lot of people are kind of struggling with what to do now, right? We can't swim. You know, Jimmy, you can't go to the gym. You know, we're all trying to get creative. So today we wanted to just talk a little bit more about how to manage your training, how to stay active during this time, you know, a little bit more behind on when to push the training, when to pull back the training, you know, taking a little bit more time to listen to your body because, you know, there is a big exercise and immunity component that I'm going to have Jimmy talk a little bit more about. But while we're talking, we would love it if you pop some questions over in the chat box. Let us know anything you might have questions about, you know, either strength, endurance, immunity wise.
Great. So if you guys heard me last week chat a little bit with Melina, one of the big things that she keyed in on was how important exercise was to building a strong immune system and to supporting that strong immune system, which is ever so important right now. And I just kind of wanted to let everybody in on some of the reasons why this is. And I think the biggest reason is when we exercise, regardless of what types of exercise we do, we all know that our heart rate goes up, our blood flow goes up. It's bringing oxygen to those parts of the body that they need it to fuel those muscles. And also when your blood flow goes up like that, our immune cells are scavenging a little bit more than they normally are when our blood flow isn't as high or our heart rate isn't as high. So we call this immune surveillance. So immune surveillance goes up. And what this does is it allows our white blood cells, or those immune fighting cells, to really get through our entire body. And they're always sensing for like those outside invaders or for those pathogens or those viruses and bacteria that don't belong. So that's kind of like the basis of why exercise is so important to strengthening our immune system. So when we go into a little bit about this, I think right now, I think people are, and Stevie, like, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we both are on the same page, but people are falling into one of two categories, and either they're doing too little right now because they can't get to their gym or they can't get their training in, they're stuck at home, or they're the complete opposite and they have so much free time on their hands and they're doing too much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially with the free time.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of find myself like when I'm not working, like it's like, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to go try to do some workouts. Exactly. So both of those sides of the equation, we really have to be careful here because, as I just said, exercise is so important to immunity. So doing too little is not really going to help you. But then on the complete other side of that, doing too much, now you're overtaxing the body. You're probably creating an overinflamed state in your body. Your body's trying to recover. It's trying to heal itself from all that training you're doing. So it's going to take away from the immune response that you might need to have that strong immune system. So I think that's kind of why we need to be really careful right now. And then just really briefly, I'll dive into some of the signs that you might be looking at if you're doing a little bit too much. And since we're a blood biomarker company and we test biomarkers in the blood, these things are very visible in the blood. And I don't think you and I are any stranger to some of these markers. Talking about elevated levels of creatine kinase, CK, which is a muscle breakdown marker. Your liver enzymes, ALT and AST, can also be high. And then I think when we're talking about a little bit too much stress on the body, you always see cortisol levels too.
Yeah, the cortisol I find is really, really high usually in the endurance crowd. Even when we're not in a global pandemic, we like to take on a lot of different responsibilities, a lot of extra things in our lives. Yeah. Yeah,
of course. So do you have any, like, really quick before we dive into like maybe some of our sport specific things that our endurance or our strength athletes are encountering right now? Do you have any tips of things that people can do to mitigate these stresses and mitigate these, like, overdoing it, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the big things, like you just mentioned, with the cortisol and the stress, I think that's something that's really relevant to any athlete or any active individual. You think about when I talk to my athletes talking about their nutrition, on a one-on-one basis, one of the big things is talking about just stress. Stress is stress, good stress, bad stress. A lot of us are experiencing a lot of extra bad stress that we're not used to, whether it's, you're trying to teach your kids, work from home, you're juggling a whole lot more. So I really encourage people to try and find a different way to relieve their stress, even if it's something like 5 minutes of meditation a day. There's apps like Headspace. You can find some guided meditations. I know a lot of us don't have a lot of that alone time. If you have family that you're living with or roommates, that would be one big thing. But the other thing is kind of relates to exercise and activity is find something that you enjoy, whether it's, if you can safely walk your dog outside or safely go to the woods or just be outside in a little less crowded space, and you're still moving your body, but not beating it down with, a little bit of that extra time, whether it's family walks, with your little corn pack, and just trying to, one of the things I did is actually not even exercise related to relieve stress is I've started paint by numbers. I'm not very good at creative things, but it's been a nice little outlet to get my face away from Twitter, not over exercise, and kind of put on some nice music and relax. So that would be the one big thing.
Perfect. I think, like, for me, I don't know why, but I found that my sleep hasn't been as good. I think since I'm working from home now, I don't have to commute anymore. So I don't have like a super strict alarm going off every morning. So I don't know, self-consciously or subconsciously, I'm staying up later now, I find, which is, I need to really get that under control. To me, like, sleep is like the best form of recovery that I can get. When I get a good quality night's sleep, I feel so fresh and I have so much energy throughout the day. That translates into my workouts later on in the day. And it's going to help me if I do, maybe I take a workout a little bit too far, like maybe overreaching a little bit there. Having that extra sleep and having that quality sleep, I think, really helps out there with that recovery. So that would be my go-to thing. But like getting outside, getting some fresh air and some sunshine, that's super helpful right now.
Yeah. Yeah. and staying away from limiting those screens before bed. I feel like we're all in front of screens a little bit more. I know this isn't fitness related, but I find myself scrolling through Twitter from like 8 to 11 p.m. and I was like, I gotta stop this. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
You paint by numbers.
All right, so let's kind of get into some of like the sport specific things. I know that you have a ton to talk about with endurance athletes right now. I mean, the Boston Marathon was supposed to be this past Monday, and that got canceled. I personally had a couple friends that were going to do that, and when that was announced, it's almost like their entire training got completely balled up and was like tossed by the side. So yeah, I'd love to hear like your thoughts of like what is the endurance athlete kind of dealing with right now.
Yeah, no, that's a very hot topic right now. There's a lot that endurance athletes are dealing with, not just the Boston Marathon, but it sounds like all the world major marathons might not happen. In the triathlon world, a bunch of full long distance Ironmans, half Ironmans are all getting canceled. So it's a very kind of hard thing to deal with. Like you take this time out of your day to train, whether it's 10, 15, 20 hours a week for this event, it's, the longer course marathons, etc. It's not really a healthy or safe thing to just kind of wake up and give yourself 4 weeks to train for one. So you've put in a lot of time and a lot of effort, and well, it's definitely the right thing that these races are getting canceled given the situation. It's one of those things where I feel like endurance athletes need to be kind to themselves and be like, recognize that this is all, this is a loss of an opportunity to push yourself to try and do your personal best. Or maybe this was a big milestone goal. You had been working to qualify for Boston in years and years. So it's okay to feel those feelings and kind of lean into them. But I do like to encourage people that all of their training hasn't been lost. I've had a full Ironman canceled because of a hurricane, and it is what it is. I encourage people to look at it as base fitness. When you do all of this training and you don't actually race, you don't have to take as much recovery time as you would post-race. So you can continue to build upon that fitness if that's what's right for you. Like Jimmy had mentioned with your blood biomarkers, the stress on your body, making sure you're getting enough recovery is really important. So it's a really athlete by athlete kind of situation where some athletes, it might be the right thing that they take a hard reset. They take 3 weeks off of running. We just had a recent blog come out where we talked to 2 of the pro athletes in our community, and they both took a little bit of time off of running to kind of just, when you're training for something like Boston or long distance, you might get those like little pains, like, oh, my ankle hurts a little bit or my shin is a little sore. So it's kind of also a good time to maybe give them a little bit of extra rest, like any sort of little aches and pains that are lingering around, rather than trying to push through them and just wind up injured. And, it can be hard to modify the pool, but, looking at different dry land workouts and also taking this time, as again, one of those pros mentioned in the blog, Nicole, working on your weaknesses and your limiters. I can assure you that every runner and triathlete has them. And usually we can get away training through the limiters, and eventually it's going to end up being a little bit of pain. So strength training, mobility, those are the things that triathletes and runners kind of tend to lack in. Flexibility is another big thing. So kind of picking, okay, maybe now's the time to focus a little bit more on getting your hips stronger or your flexibility. There's so many free workouts on Instagram and Facebook, Zoom, that you can try to incorporate those in and really build those habits. So then when you are back in a training cycle, that would be, a great way to come back stronger from something like this without forcing 50-mile running weeks.
What would you say, do you think like for endurance athletes, is it beneficial to focus on some cross training? Maybe should they take this time to do some strength training? Like what benefit does that provide?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a great point, Jeremy. And that goes into the limiters. It's always good to be a strong athlete, and runners, cyclists, swimmers, they're all a little bit notorious for neglecting it. Been there, I've gotten better about it as I've been in the sport longer, but I hear that, it's hard to find more time to do those strength workouts. So yeah, so just looking and seeing what's available online. I know a lot of pro runners have been putting up different workouts that they do, whether it's, again, strength focused or flexibility and mobility focused. Even if it's getting into the habit of doing yoga once or twice a week, that's another good thing for that crowd. But yeah, definitely trying to add some more strength work in there is a big helper.
Yeah, I know, like, I'm like right there with you. I'm very much comfortable in my environment. I love the barbell, and I completely neglect the aerobic base that I need to build that's going to make me a better athlete. But I guess now's the time, like, to really work on those weaknesses when you don't have an immediate race or something that you're specifically training for. Now,
you don't have to like worry about being sore, right? If I try this new HIIT class or strength workout, then I'm going to be too, like when I was training for Ironman, I'd be like, I'll be too sore to do my tempo run or my tempo bike. Like I would miss these key workouts, so I can't do it. So now's the time to kind of play with that. And I know personally, I was going to do some longer distance running, and I'm now focusing on, can I get faster? So I'm spending less time, a lot less hours, but I'm adding in more intensity. So it's balancing out, not doing too much, but then working on something that's a weakness. So just kind of finding that.
Okay.
You need to hit the cardio a little bit more, hit the air bike.
So I actually have a rower in my garage. So that's and I have been taking the opportunity in the morning, since I don't have my commute into the city of Boston every day. So I kind of still try to wake up early, and I take that time to go down and do rowing intervals every morning. So that's been helping me a lot. So I see we have some questions here about some home gym stuff, how to get some strength training in. So I guess I can maybe take the opportunity here to go into a little bit about strength training at home.
Teach endurance athletes how to be a little bit better at strength training at home. I know. I still need help with it. I've gotten better, but.
So to me, like, you guys can all see that Stevie and I come from completely different backgrounds, because to me, cardio is just like lifting the barbell more than 5 repetitions. So that's like my cardio. But okay, so when it comes to strength training at home, I think like if you're an endurance athlete, you can probably still get outside and run if you're doing it safely, if you're keeping your distance from people. Cycling, if you're living in parts of the country where the weather permits it.
Indoor bike trainers, Swift.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then Peloton is big. So I feel like people are not so restricted with when they want to get cardio training in or endurance training in. But it seems that everyone's extremely restricted in, well, how do I strength train when I don't have my gym's closed? I don't have weights at home. So what I've actually found, there's almost an infinite amount of sources for body weight workouts, and you can find them all over social media, all over the internet. Tons of things like air squats, lunges, push-ups, sit-ups, all that types of stuff. Yes, you are using your body weight, but that is a form of strength training. Mm-hmm. I think I actually put out a cool video the other day of items that you can use around your house that actually can be good for strength training. So I actually had a backpack, and I just went around my house. I had some old textbooks. I went to my pantry. I got a bunch of canned goods and filled this backpack. And the backpack for sure was 50 pounds. Now, if you're doing the same body weight exercises, but you're wearing this backpack, or you're holding this backpack up or pressing it overhead, I mean, that's a great weight training tool. That right there is really good tips to get some strength training in. Mm-hmm. There's also some other really good things. If you have minimal equipment, if you have a kettlebell, a dumbbell, it's like I said in the video, like now you're really cooking with fire, and the opportunities now are like completely almost endless of what you're doing with this stuff. So just know that there's tons of resources online. Me personally, on my personal social media, my personal Instagram, I post what I'm doing every day. I don't have a full gym by any means, but I do have a lot of examples of workouts that I do with just one dumbbell, a lot of unilateral work, using one arm presses and then switching to the other arm. So that's really great stuff there. Some other notes.
I have a question for you though. I'm sorry. What if someone's like really new to strength training, right? And they're worried, of course, one of the things is you have to worry about your form, not something as critical in other sports, especially if you're adding weight in. Are there like any really great kind of YouTube resources or something where someone could, watch somebody to make sure that they're not hurting themselves when they're trying to lift if they're new to it?
For sure. I mean, being a CrossFitter, CrossFit.com has a ton of resources of instructional videos on how to properly do strength training movements. You can also find, if you are a strength athlete, chances are you are following some strength athletes on Instagram, kind of by watching their form. If you want feedback, because like we don't have personal trainers or coaches right now, so you're kind of missing the feedback of, am I doing it right? I think everyone has a mirror in their house. So if you're lucky enough to have a full length mirror and you do those exercises and you look at yourself in the mirror, you can kind of see, oh, am I keeping my chest up when I squat, or am I caving forward? You can that would be my recommendation on how to get some feedback.
Okay.
That's
always been one of my big concerns, for someone who's hurt herself doing a yoga pose,
exactly.
Just to make sure you're doing it safely. And so if someone's newer, like, how do you recommend they kind of structure their strength training? Is there any like loose guidelines of like how they should put it in throughout the week, or?
Yeah. So if you're like completely new to strength training, what I would recommend is you kind of follow like at least for the first 2 or 3 weeks, you do some strength training on one day, take a rest day. Do strength training on another day, take a rest day. That's one great way to do it. Or you can segment the bodies. You can do like an upper body day on a Monday, and then you can do a lower body day on a Tuesday. So you're not like compounding the same body parts day after day. You're allowing at least a 1 day recovery in there per body part. I think those are great. There's less impact type of exercises that you can do. And this is like one of my notes that I had on, if you're very limited on equipment, you can do isometric movements. These are things where you're holding a contraction. So examples of these would be like planks. You get in a plank and you try to hold it for as long as possible. Very low impact on your body. Another thing would be a wall sit. You put your back on a wall, and you put it down at a 90-degree angle. I tell you, if you're doing this for a minute, those legs are going to be screaming. So that's a great strength training exercise, but it's very low impact on your body, and it's limited by your ability. You know what I mean? You're not really going to hurt yourself there. That's really great. And then if you want to be really kind to those joints, another tip that I have is to do tempo work. So this also works great if you don't have heavy weights or strength equipment. But if you're doing a squat, for example, and as you squat down, you do it for 3 seconds. So 1, 2, 3. You can hold it at the bottom for 3 seconds and then come up 1, 2, 3.
Okay. So, I feel my legs burning already.
Exactly. Like you're limiting the intensity on your joints. So it's great for beginners. The chances of hurting yourself or doing too much are very low.
Awesome.
So I think those would be my tips there.
Thanks.
So I think you were getting into it a little bit, but what if there's those athletes that they still want to compete? Do they have any options right now?
Oh yeah, no, that's a great one. I was getting there and then I got distracted. But yeah, so if you were like, I have all this fitness, I'm in the best shape of my life, and now I can't race. I can't go for that PR, that personal best. But a suggestion was going after Strava segments. I mean, if you're an endurance athlete or a runner, you know what Strava is. For everybody else, it's like social media for exercise. You upload runs, bikes, swims. You can really upload anything, but they have segments that you can race virtually, of course. So you can try and race some Strava segments either on your bike or running nearby and try to get the crown, the king of the mountain, or the crown for a run. That would be super fun. You could do some trying to go for fastest known times. That's usually a little bit more in the ultra endurance world, like fastest known time. I can't remember who just did one in Vermont, like on some trail in Vermont from point to point. It's usually hundreds of miles. But you could even do something with yourself, like fastest known time around your block 20 times. And then maybe challenge a friend who lives in the neighborhood and they can do it at a separate time.
That's cool though.
Yeah, or like things on Zwift. There's Zwift racing where you can virtually race other riders and try to use, use your fitness that way. Those are some fun things that you can definitely do. Yeah.
I think like that is also echoed in the strength community too.
Yeah.
I know, like, specifically from a CrossFit point of view, they're doing a lot of online competitions now.
Okay.
You can videotape your workouts and submit it. It's actually very similar to what the Open does, the CrossFit Open. That's every year. And also, I kind of want to note to people, like, you can find CrossFit gyms or weightlifting gyms. A lot of these gyms right now are closed by government mandates, but they're still providing some type of class, whether it be on Zoom or some like virtual class. This is a great time to, maybe if you've been a little hesitant about actually getting in the gym and being a little self-conscious about doing strength training while maybe being watched by the entire gym, this is a great time. All these places, all these CrossFit gyms are offering memberships now that are virtual. So you can get on your computer, you're in the comforts of your own home. You can turn your camera off if you want and follow along with the entire group of classes that are going on at this time. So that's a great thing if you still want to compete and you still want the community aspect, like Strava. I think it's a great community aspect that is keeping us all somewhat connected at this time where we're kind of being socially distant. So I think that's really good.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's the nice thing with all these Zoom workouts. I've tried some things that I would like to turn my video off on that are getting a little bit outside of my comfort zone, but it's been fun. Yeah.
So I think we kind of was like scrolling through some of the questions and comments here. It looks like we kind of touched on these comments. People are asking about what to do with very little weight or no weights at all at their homes. We kind of touched on that stuff. So I think we were answering questions there. So I think we can probably wrap it up here. But as I said to everyone before, if you have any other questions, please leave them in the comments thread of the live post here. Stevie and I, as well as our other Inside Tracker admins, are always in there answering the questions. If you don't want to do it on Facebook, you can DM us on Instagram. You can email us. We always try to answer as many questions as we can. And I think, Stevie, any final parting thoughts here before we go?
Yeah, I would just again, being kind to yourself. It's okay to keep yourself, trained, but you don't really need to be worrying about peaking for races. Just listen to your body. If you need an extra rest day here and there, it's not going to be the end of the world. It's better to keep yourself healthy and strong rather than to just kind of push yourself over the edge, especially during this time. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us. This is a topic that I know me and Stevie, we could probably talk for hours about this stuff, but we won't keep you guys for too long. So I want to thank everyone for joining us. Thanks, Stevie, for coming on here, and we will catch you next week.
Yeah. Bye, guys.
See you guys.